My name is Marin Vale, 29 years old. The week my contract ended, I learned how fast a savings account can turn into a countdown clock. Rent, utilities, the tiny math of survival, every number wanted answers I couldn't give. Returning to my parents' house for a month, maybe two, felt like a bridge. Not forever, just until the next thing. Dad didn't hesitate when I asked. He smiled the way men smile when they know you owe them, then steered me into his version of generosity. "Stay here rent-free," he said, "and help fix the place up." He gestured toward the back hallway and the spare bedroom as if they'd volunteered for the job. The carpet was stained a dozen different histories. The door hung crooked on a hinge that gave up last winter. The ceiling plaster peeled in soft curls. The walls looked like no one had touched them since the family portrait days. Those careful smiles had peeled off first. I knew what I was doing. I'd renovated rentals for a friend of mine last year, learned to read houses by the way they grown. I told Dad we'd need to replace the subfloor in the hallway and bedroom. The old carpet had been hiding damp rot. He waved a hand. "Too expensive," he said. "Just lay the new flooring on top. It'll be fine." It wouldn't. But arguing with him is like arguing with weather. You end up soaked either way. I told myself it didn't matter. I was investing in my own space. The bedroom would be mine. For a little while. Eviction wasn't even a whisper in my throat yet. Mornings started before my body woke. Nights ended when my hands told me to stop. For almost 2 months, I lived in a fog of sawdust and paint fumes, kneeling on hardwood until my knees remembered a different career path. I ripped out carpet that coughed dirt when it moved. I patched seams the house had been splitting along quietly for years. I replaced light fixtures with ones that didn't buzz like guilt. I built shelves into the wall because the corners begged to hold something sturdy. The hallway got a new spine, creaks braced, plaster mended, a ceiling skim coat that made the room breathe again. Some of the materials came from the garage, a half-gallon of paint with a skin I had to peel back, a box of screws that didn't match anything but tried. If I wanted it done right, the rest had to come from my wallet. $3,700 in flooring, paint, wood, brushes that didn't shed, a door that closed, a handle that didn't wobble like it was lying to me. I didn't keep a ledger. I kept momentum. Evan stopped by on Sundays with takeout and quiet. He never asked how long I was staying, just said, "Tell me where to hold it," and lifted the other end of the shelf. Once, when I was too tired to put sentences together, he said, "Jenna's back in town." He meant it the way weather is mentioned, neutral. His ex shows up in family stories sometimes like a rerun nobody asked for. I nodded, set the frame square, and kept going. Whatever Jenna wanted to resurrect wasn't mine to bury. The day I finished, Dad called me into the living room. Mom stood beside him with the careful, blank face she uses before she agrees with whatever he's already decided. I wiped paint from my wrists and braced for thank you, some clipped version of appreciation we could all pretend was real. Instead, Dad folded his hands as if he were the mayor of this small, mean town. "We've decided your sister will live in the room." It wasn't a joke. If it had been, he would have enjoyed it longer. Mom nodded, a small, tight movement, like logic had pinned her hair back. My laugh came out loud, wrong in my mouth. "You're kidding." "It makes more sense," Dad said. "She needs the space more than you do." Lucia, the sister with a perfectly decent apartment and a boyfriend who bulk buys eye contact. The same sister who hadn't been around for 2 months, who hadn't lifted a box, who would struggle to identify a stud finder if it winked at her. I looked at Mom. She held my gaze for 1 second and then let it fall to the carpet that I'd ripped out. There was a clean white baseboard where the old one had cracked. She didn't notice, or she did, and decided not to. "When did you decide this?" I asked. Dad shrugged, committee casual. "We've been thinking about it for a while. It's nothing personal." Not personal. The room I'd pulled out of rot with my hands. The hallway I'd taught to walk without groaning. The door I'd hung perfectly square after 3 tries. The shelves that still smelled like cedar. Nothing personal. For 1 small, feral second, I pictured a fight. The words lined up like nails. 4 grand of my money, 8 weeks of my spine. A deal I didn't write down because I believe family was a contract you didn't have to notarize. I imagined demanding repayment, imagined the math returning to me with interest. But I know my parents. Their favorite sport is arguing with people who care. You can't win at a game that punishes you for wanting fairness. So I didn't give them the satisfaction of watching me break. I said nothing. I turned, walked past the brand new door, and packed what little I owned. I'd been sleeping on the living room couch because I thought moving into the finished room would feel ceremonial, like the end of a long sentence. It turned out to be a different ceremony entirely. I carried my bags outside without asking for help. Dad watched through the kitchen window like he was supervising a delivery. Mom rearranged a stack of mail. My hands were steady. My heartbeat wasn't, too slow and too loud at the same time, like a drum underwater. The house didn't follow me to the truck. It never does. Houses let you go and pretend they never held you. I drove until street lights looked like punctuation marks that could end anything. A 24-hour gas station lit itself up like a promise no one should make. I parked under its tired fluorescent canopy, folded myself across the back seat, and slept badly. In the morning, I counted the cash left and decided not to burn it on a motel just to prove a point. I called 3 friends. 2 had toddlers. 1 had a lease enforcement clause that loved him more than I did. Then I remembered Mike, old coworker, good guy, the kind of friend who keeps a couch you don't have to apologize to. "Come over," he said, no questions. His place was an hour away. When I walked in, he handed me a beer, and the relief was almost medicinal. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need the gossip. He only said, "Sit," and turned on a game that neither of us watched. I expected anger to fight its way to the surface and camp there. Instead, I felt hollow, clean almost, like something had been cut out that never belonged to me. 48 hours later, my phone learned a trick. It could light up every 2 seconds. Dad, Mom, even Lucia, who only texts when she needs to be congratulated, all lined up on my lock screen. I let the first dozen miss me. Then Sarah, my cousin, broke the surface with a text that smelled like gasoline. "Dude, what did you do? Your parents are freaking out." "What are you talking about?" I wrote back. "They won't say, but your dad's talking lawyers." I stared at the word lawyers until it stopped looking like English. I hadn't touched their house. I hadn't broken anything. I'd left the room the way you leave a prayer, clean, hopeful, finished. So why was he reaching for courtrooms? I leaned back in Mike's chair and stared at the ceiling until the drywall taught me patience. Then it clicked, slow and bright. It wasn't what I'd done, it was what I hadn't been allowed to do. I saw the subfloor in my mind, dark patches I'd pointed to with a gloved hand, the soft give under my weight, the smell of old water. Dad had said, "Lay the laminate, it'll air out. Don't be dramatic." I'd argued, then done it his way because I'd chosen the smaller fight. Now there was nothing left to argue with but the science of rot. My phone buzzed again. "Sarah, your sister showed up to move in and lost it. The house stinks, like something died." I didn't laugh. I let the smile happen without teeth. Dad had cut corners. Mold doesn't care about family. By morning, the messages had changed shape. Gone was the guilt trip with its satin gloves. Now it was bargaining disguised as emergency. "Please, we need your help. Your father's overwhelmed. If you could just come back." The word just sat in my throat like a splinter. 48 hours after I left, the house that had used my hands and dismissed my body finally met itself in a mirror. It didn't like the smell. I didn't either, but I liked the silence on my end. It had its own kind of perfume. Mike was in the kitchen making bad coffee the way only good friends can when my phone lit again. A stack of missed calls lined up like dominoes waiting to fall. Dad, Mom, Lucia. A group text I didn't recognize. Extended relatives warming up in the bullpen. I let it all keep ringing until the buzzing became part of the room's white noise. Then Sarah texted a photo. The hallway I'd refinished was now a corridor of yellow tape and fans, industrial, loud, and completely useless against a problem that had lived its whole life under the floor. A contractor crouched by the baseboard with a moisture meter. The number on the tiny screen looked like a fever. "They say it's mold," Sarah wrote. Bad. Like tear it all out bad. I could smell it through the pixels, wet drywall, sour wood, a sweet rot that turns the back of your throat into an apology. I hadn't caused it. I had covered it, per Dad's orders, because he insisted the house couldn't possibly be wrong about itself. 10 minutes later, Lucia called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. The third time I answered. "What do you want?" I said, not unkind, just tired. "This isn't funny," she shot back. "I can't move in like this. The whole place smells like a basement that drowned." "Then don't," I said. She took a breath I could hear. "If you would just come look." "Look at what?" I asked. "Dad told me to lay laminate over wet subfloor. I said don't." He said do. I did. Now it's mold. That's not a mystery. That's math. Dad's willing to work something out, she said, choosing the words like flowers. If you come fix it, you can stay. No more drama. I actually laughed. A stay of execution in the room I built? How generous. Silence, then smaller. Just come, please. Curiosity is a cruel friend. Fine, I said. I'll come look. I'm not promising anything. When I pulled into the driveway, Dad was pacing like he could wear a groove into the concrete and call it leadership. The second he saw me, he pasted on a smile that had been ironed too hard. Marin, he said, like the word tasted expensive. Good to see you. Come take a look. I stepped inside and the odor hit like a wall you can taste. Musty, damp, a layered smell of wet paper and soil and something sweet that meant the colony was thriving. In the doorway, Lucia stood with her arms folded, ponytail too perfect for a disaster. I can't live here, she said, nose wrinkled. It's disgusting. I knelt at the threshold, pressed a hand to the new floor I'd installed, and felt the faintest give where boards had swallowed moisture at the seams. Close to the baseboard, the laminate was cupping. A slow wave trapped under a hard sea. I didn't need a meter to know the verdict. You'll have to rip it all out, I said. Flooring, underlayment, probably part of the subfloor, the hallway too. The walls may have wicked moisture. Check 15 inches up. Shelves can come out, but they'll be trash once you get the spores moving. Dad cleared his throat in that way men do when they're about to declare something reasonable that is not. So here's what we're thinking, he said. You come back, help us tear this up, redo it right. And this time, he smiled, magnanimous, we won't kick you out. You can stay as long as you need. A sound came out of me that I recognized as humor only because it didn't break anything on its way up. No, I said. His smile twitched, like a public official caught off mic. No, I'm not fixing this. Marin, be reasonable, he said, voice lowering into the register he uses for discipline. This is your family. We support each other. 2 days ago, I said, you supported Lucia, with my labor. He moved into the next formation. Remorse as strategy. We made a mistake. We should have handled it differently. But what's done is done, and now we need to move forward. Are you really going to let your family struggle when you can help? Yes, I said. I turned and walked back down the hallway I'd taught to walk straight. I passed the shelves I'd measured twice so they'd be level the first time. At the door, Mom reached for my sleeve and missed. Lucia looked away first. I didn't slam the door. I didn't owe the house a last word. On the drive back to Mike's, my phone lit up like I'd committed a crime. I ignored the calls until Mike wandered in with 2 beers and a raised eyebrow. Your mom, he said, holding up his phone. Public Relations Department went live. The post was long and performative, the kind that reads like it was drafted in a bathrobe and edited by grievances. She didn't use my name. She didn't have to. Some children, it began, forget where they came from. We opened our home to a daughter in need, and she abandoned us in ours. The comments were a chorus of choir robes. Family always comes first. Kids these days have no respect. Praying for you, sweetie. Here's your aunt, Mike said, scrolling. Don't worry, sis. I'll talk to her. By morning, my phone was a group project. How could you do this to your parents? Aunt. Whatever's going on, fix it. They're your parents. Uncle. Why you do this? Grandma, whose thumbs usually struggled to find punctuation, but had no trouble lining up judgment. I was about to mute the entire branch of the family tree when Sarah called. It's worse than the post, she said. They're telling people you stole from them. I felt something icy settle behind my sternum. Stole what? Supplies, tools, screws, stuff they claim they needed to finish, and that's why everything fell apart. I sat down. They do realize all my money went into their materials. I know, she said. That's not the point. The point is, the story travels faster than invoices. Mike leaned in the doorway, reading my face. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Sarah was quiet on the line. Seriously? They want to fight, I said. They want me to show up to court in the comments. I'm not giving them content. Mike grinned. Cold. I like it. Sarah sighed. Okay. But don't be surprised if they escalate. People like this don't retire. They pivot. She wasn't wrong. The next day at the warehouse, Dad showed up. I was at a folding table signing inventory sheets when the lobby door chimed, and there he was, looking out of place in a building that hosted fewer lies than his do. My manager glanced at me, eyebrows in a question mark. I waved him off and stepped into the hall. What are you doing here? I asked. We need to talk, he said, arms folded like authority could be worn. Your mother hasn't slept. She's sick over this. You can't be this cruel. She slept fine the night you kicked me out, I said. We want our family back together, he went on, ignoring the line like it didn't fit the script. You've put us in an impossible position. Is that fair? Fair, I repeated, tasting the word. Fair would have been letting me move into the room I rebuilt. Fair would have been not lying about me online. Fair would have been not asking me to fix a problem you created and then sell it back to me as mercy. His jaw moved the way it does when he's trying on contrition. We only did that because you forced our hand. I laughed once, cleanly. You forced your own hand. I didn't touch the deck. He scrubbed a hand over his face, a man tired from lifting judgments he'd made himself. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to fix this. Let's find a solution. There isn't one, I said. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Marin, he said, dropping his voice as if intimacy could be borrowed. We're still your family. No, I said. You're just people I used to know. I walked away before he could find a finish. That night, I blocked every number with our last name. I changed mine the next morning and sent it to exactly 4 people. I found a studio with a door that locked and a window that didn't stick in the humidity. I moved in with 2 duffels, a borrowed mattress, and the kind of relief you only feel when nobody owns your sleep. For a while, Sarah kept me updated. Dad telling anyone who'd listen that I'd turned my back, Mom crying to relatives who loved a front row seat. But eventually I told Sarah to stop. Freedom needs less narration than trauma does. Evan came over with groceries and didn't ask if I was okay. He knows I don't like being asked things I have to answer in past tense. We ate standing up, and he kissed me the way a person kisses you when they're not auditioning for anything. Later, when his phone buzzed with a photo Jenna had posted at some bar I used to feel judged in, he silenced it without looking. It wasn't a performance, it was a fact. For the first time in a long time, my life fit in my body again. The quiet wasn't punishment. It was air. Silence is supposed to mean peace. But in my family, it only means someone's rewriting the story. 2 weeks after I'd blocked them, my cousin Sarah sent a screenshot to my new number with a message that just said, "You're trending again." It was a public post, Mom's Facebook, written like a sermon. The profile picture was an old one, taken at the house before everything fell apart. She still used it because it made her look stable. Some people forget who raised them. We took her in when she had nowhere else to go. We gave her food, shelter, and trust. And when we needed her most, she turned her back. Some daughters don't understand what family means until it's too late. The comments section looked like a wake. So heartbreaking. Kids these days have no respect. You deserve better, hun. Even my aunt chimed in. Don't worry, sis, I'll talk to her. I didn't bother scrolling further. I didn't need to read my own public eulogy. At work that afternoon, the warehouse buzzed like usual. Forklifts, clipped conversations, boxes thudding on pallets. I was inventory lead, which meant I spent my days surrounded by things that made sense. Numbers, lists, rows that stayed where you put them. The kind of order families don't have. Around lunchtime, my boss, Mitch, poked his head out of the office. You okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said. Why? He shrugged. Just saw your dad outside. For a second, I thought he was joking. Then I heard it. The squeak of the lobby door. The echo of my father's voice traveling down the concrete hall. Of course he showed up. I met him halfway before Mitch could intervene. You can't be here, I said flatly. He smiled, the kind of smile people use to get past reception desks. We need to talk. No, you need to leave. He took a breath, performing restraint. Your mother is worried sick. She hasn't slept. She slept fine the night you changed your mind about me, I said. His jaw tightened. You've become cruel. No, I said. I've become unavailable. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. We just want to fix this, Marin. We all made mistakes. You walking away, this isn't fair. There it was again, the family's favorite word, fair. Fair would have been letting me live in the room I built, I said. Fair would have been not lying about me online. Fair would have been treating my work as work, not free labor you could throw away. His face hardened. We only posted because you forced our hand. I laughed, short and bitter. No, you posted because the truth doesn't get you sympathy. He stared at me, searching for a version of me that still bent. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to come up with a solution. There isn't one, I said. You already chose pride. You can keep it. He lowered his voice, tried to soften it. Marin, we're still your family. No, I said, stepping back. You're just people I used to help. I turned and walked away before he could find another script. Behind me, I heard him call my name, but it sounded more like habit than affection. Mitch was waiting by the office door when I came back. You want me to have security walk him out? I shook my head. No need. He'll leave when there's no one left to convince. Mitch studied me for a second. You know, he said, people who can build an entire hallway from scratch usually don't stay inventory leads forever. It wasn't pity. It was respect disguised as small talk. I nodded once and went back to work. That night, my phone lit up again. Blocked numbers, voicemails stacking like junk mail. I didn't listen. But one of them wasn't my parents. It was Aunt Donna, who always plays referee in family fights she's never witnessed. Her voice came through calm, rehearsed. Honey, whatever happened, you should really apologize to your parents. They're heartbroken. You only get one family. I deleted it mid-sentence. You only get one family, sure, but sometimes that's the tragedy, not the comfort. The next morning, the drama evolved, as it always does. Mom's online post had done what all public martyrdoms do. It gave the gossip oxygen. Suddenly, distant cousins I hadn't spoken to since middle school were sending paragraphs of moral advice. One message began, "If you knew how much your mom cries at night, as though tears are proof of innocence." But the worst one came from Grandma, texted through shaky thumbs that could barely find the letters. "Why you do this? You were a good girl." I sat staring at it, the words wobbling slightly from her arthritic hands, and for the first time since I left the house, my eyes stung, because Grandma didn't know any better. She was hearing one side, the louder side. I thought about replying. I didn't. Explaining yourself to people who already picked their version is like trying to mop in a flood. Evan came by after work. I was still in my warehouse hoodie, sitting cross-legged on the floor, eating leftover pasta straight from the container. He watched me for a minute, then sat beside me. "They showed up at your job?" he asked. "Dad did. Same speech as always." He leaned back on his elbows. "You going to do anything about the post?" "No," I said. "That's the point. They want a reaction. They want proof I still care enough to argue." He smirked faintly. "That's new. You used to argue about everything." I ran out of breath, I said. He reached for the container, stole a forkful of pasta. "You know Jenna texted me?" I blinked. "The ex?" "Yeah. She saw your mom's post and asked if I was okay. Said she couldn't believe you'd abandon your family." My laugh startled even me. "You didn't answer, right?" He smiled. "Nah, just blocked her. You're rubbing off on me." I grinned. Finally, something I'm proud of. The following weekend, I drove past my parents' house on the way to the grocery store. I told myself it was just a shortcut, but my chest tightened when I saw the for sale sign planted in the yard. The lawn looked brittle, the blinds drawn. A realtor's car was parked out front. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Whatever was left inside wasn't mine anymore, and maybe never had been. Monday morning, I came into work early. My locker had a folded note taped to it. No handwriting, just a printed message. "Family doesn't quit on family." No signature, but I didn't need one. The paper smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, cheap lilac, the scent that used to mean she was leaving the house angry. I crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash bin. If that was their last play, it was a small one. A few days later, Sarah texted one final update. "They're telling everyone you robbed them." "Of what?" I replied. "Dad says tools, screws, maybe a drill. None of it's true, obviously, but the story's spreading." "Let it." "Don't you care what people think?" she asked. "No," I said. "I care that they finally stopped thinking I'll show up." That night, I opened the window in my apartment. The air outside smelled clean. Fresh rain and concrete, not mold and regret. Sometimes revenge isn't about ruining anyone. It's about watching them do it themselves while you build something quieter somewhere else. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without rehearsing what I'd say if they called. Because the truth is, I had nothing left to say. A month passed before I realized that silence had finally stopped feeling temporary. No more blocked number voicemails, no family group texts rising from the dead, no new heartfelt Facebook essays about ungrateful children. Just quiet. I moved into a small apartment near the edge of town. One bedroom, a balcony that overlooked a grocery store parking lot, and walls that didn't remember me as anything but rent paid on time. I bought a second-hand table, hung my own curtains, and realized that this, not the house I'd fixed, not the family that used me, felt like home. Evan came over that first weekend. He carried 2 boxes, both labeled kitchen, even though one was full of books. He didn't make speeches about fresh starts. He just opened the window and said, "Good airflow. You'll sleep better here." He was right. I still caught whispers about my family through Sarah now and then. "Your parents are still telling people you stole from them," she'd say apologetically. "Your dad told Aunt Donna you took a whole toolbox." "Let them," I'd reply. Sarah eventually stopped updating me, not because she didn't care, but because she understood that peace can't survive constant summaries of chaos. Some nights, the quiet made me restless. I'd sit on the balcony with tea and scroll through the life I'd stepped out of. Relatives posting holiday photos, my parents pretending the empty chairs were just off screen, my sister posting throwbacks to her beloved childhood home. None of them mentioned the mold or the truth. Why would they? The story was cleaner when I was the villain. Every once in a while, I'd get a mutual tagged memory of Jenna, Evan's ex, still orbiting through his extended friend group. She'd always been perfectly polite to my face. Too polite, the kind of nice that feels like someone measuring your worth silently. Now she was dating someone new, and her captions read like parables about loyalty. I showed Evan one of her posts once. "Some people don't know how to stay when things get hard." And he laughed. "She still thinks she's the main character," he said. "You all dated the same kind of women before me, didn't you?" "Probably," he said. "The kind who only want to be right." "Guess that's why you like me," I teased. "I just want to be free." He smiled. "Exactly." I still dream about the house sometimes. Not the version they ruined, but the one I built. The hallway clean and bright, the bedroom smelling like paint and cedar. In the dream, I always walk in expecting something to collapse, but it never does. I wake up before it can. One morning, Sarah called again, her voice caught between amusement and disbelief. "You won't believe this," she said. "Try me." "They're moving. Your parents finally sold the house." "Good," I said. "Let someone else deal with the smell." She laughed. "Dad's telling everyone the damage came from poor workmanship." "Of course he is." "You want to know where they're going?" "No," I said. Then, because old habits die hard, I added, "Are they okay?" "Marin," she said gently, "they're fine. They always land on someone else's back." I smiled at the truth in that. Then I guess I'm glad it's not mine anymore. A week later, I was unloading groceries when I found a card wedged under my door. No envelope, just my name scrawled in my father's handwriting. The blocky, impatient kind. "Marin, your mother misses you. Family is family, no matter what. Please call." There was a check inside for $200. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the milk. It was like watching someone try to buy forgiveness at a yard sale. I left the card on the counter for a day, then fed it to the shredder along with an old credit card offer. Evan saw the shredded paper later and asked, "Something important?" "Not anymore," I said. Spring came fast that year. The moldy winter air turned crisp. Trees on my street began dressing themselves again. I planted a few herbs on the balcony: basil, rosemary, a stubborn little mint that refused to die. Sometimes I caught myself watching it grow like it was proof that things could thrive even after being choked out for a while. Evan joked one night that I'd turned into a suburban witch, tending plants and mixing tea leaves like spells. "It's not witchcraft," I said. "It's maintenance." He grinned. "You're the only person I know who can make healing sound like construction work." Guess I've had practice. On a quiet Sunday morning, I went hiking alone, first time in years. The trail was steep, but the air was clear. Halfway up, I stopped to breathe and realized there was no voice in my head anymore telling me to go back, to call, to fix. Just my own, calm and certain. At the overlook, I sat on a rock and watched the city stretch below me. Roofs, roads, all of those families pretending peace while shouting behind closed doors. I whispered something I hadn't said aloud before. "I forgive you." It wasn't for them. It was for me. That night, I deleted the last remaining folder of screenshots and messages. Every text, every voicemail, every proof of what they did, gone. It wasn't erasing history. It was refusing to let it occupy space, rent-free. Evan came over with dinner, and when he saw me wiping the last file from my phone, he asked, "You sure?" "Yes," I said. "They can keep their version. I'm done carrying mine." He nodded, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good." Months later, I ran into Sarah again at a cafe. She told me my parents had moved to a smaller town. "They say they're starting over," she said. "Your dad's trying to flip houses now. Guess he didn't learn anything." Or learned all the wrong things, I said. Sarah laughed. You want to know the best part? What? They tried to call a contractor to fix the new place. The guy bailed halfway through, said he didn't like the energy. I almost choked on my coffee. Some curses build themselves. The next morning, I sat on my balcony again. The mint had overgrown its pot. The basil had gone to seed. The wind carried the smell of both, sharp, alive, unpretentious. For the first time since leaving that house, I felt something lighter than satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. I picked a few mint leaves, crushed them between my fingers, and smiled. Some things, I whispered, you just have to let rot on their own. And with that, I closed the door behind me, the last one I would ever need to.